So to get your door handle out of a 91 to 1995 Acura Legend, you want to have the door torn apart to about this point right here. You got to have the trim panel off, the window glass out of the way, the window regulator out of the way, because even with the window rolled down or rolled up, it's really difficult to get to the bolts that hold the door handle in and do everything else that you're going to have to do. So I'm going to show you how to do those things. You look up in there and it looks like you just got to take a couple of bolts out of the back side, but there's a couple of tricky things, a couple of hints, and a couple of tools that I'll show you to make it all easier and make it to where you don't break anything. You're going to need some kind of a 10mm. If you just have a wrench, that'll be fine, or a ratchet with a long extension. A paint can opener like this with a nice 90-degree curve in it. It's going to be very handy. A really large flathead screwdriver, and to reinstall the door, it helps to have a pair of channel locks or a large set of pliers to help you push the opening rod back in. But for disassembly, we don't really need that. I'll show you the first thing you want to do to make things easier is to take this bolt out here, slide the window seal out of the channel and set it out of the way, and with that bolt out, the channel that runs up here will slide downward. It's an old car, so it may be a little corroded and hard to do. Give it a little wiggle, slide that channel down, and you can remove him out of the way. So we're looking at the driver's side. Door handle is the white piece right there. The opener rod going to the door latch is right there. You try to slide right up underneath, just like that, and give it a little twist. Now this one I've already popped out, so it was really easy for me to do one-handed. Yours has been in there for 30 years, it may be a little more difficult. But you try to manually pull on just the rod with your hands, you're most likely going to break something. But if you get the pressure just right, going up from underneath and twisting against the two pieces, that's the best way I've found to do it without breaking anything. You can get that piece out of the way. And then you can get up in here. There's where your little clip is. Paint can opener. Right up underneath that clip. Just like that. That might be enough, maybe not. Seems like it's got to come down further than that. There we go. Once that clip's hanging, this thing should wiggle right out. There you go. And then it's just two 10mm bolts, and you'll get that handle out without breaking anything. So to take that mirror apart, all I did was up under the back edge there's a couple of spots where you can start to pry it. This white piece of plastic is going to be extremely brittle. The top of the mirror hooks right there, and it's supposed to snap in these tabs to these holes right here. So the bottom kind of snaps loose and then unhooks out of there like that. So as you can see, there was all kinds of screws I had to take out to disassemble this thing, but there's still not a good way to take it apart because of the wiring harness. You're not going to get this plug to slide through all that stuff to be able to pull all this stuff apart. So you got to D-pin the plug. On this one, looks like there's two little lock tabs on either side that I'll have to pull out, and then I might have to get me a pin tool out. But very important, you might want to take pictures where your wire colors go. This is the D-pin tool that I'm using. It's one that's pretty narrow, and it's got an angled cut on the top, so one side's kind of sharper. That bottom edge has got the sharper tip on it. So the tabs that we pulled off are secondary locks, just in case the tab that's inside of there gives way for whatever reason. On this particular plug, you're going to use the front side or the plug side. The side opposite the wires is what we're looking at. So you have to get in there, and if you pretend that there's a wire in that slot, you're going to see the end of the metal terminal inside of that square, and you're going to slide right below it, and that sharper edge is on the top right now, and you slide along the bottom and you bend that tab away from the pin a little bit, and it should release it. So I'm going to demonstrate to you. I'm going to go ahead and snap one of the terminals back into the plug. One side, there's no notch on it at all. On the back side of that pin, you'll see a little hole, and that's the side that needs to go on that little tab, the little notch that holds it in there. All those tabs are across the center. So when I slide him back in, and this is probably not the right spot for this wire, but I'm just demonstrating, it snaps in, holds it in place. So to take them back out, like I said, we're just going to slide down until we feel it. And I'm giving a little downward pressure, and I felt it. And it comes right out. So obviously putting all this back together with fresh paint on everything is going to be a little nerve-wracking. Might want to take you plenty of pictures and remember what order all this stuff goes back on. I've only had one little problem taking all this apart. I did have one little piece break. I'll show you that, so maybe you can be more careful than I was. But you got this black plastic piece that kind of covers this hole right here, and there was one little Phillips head screw that went into this plastic. It's part of the cap. Step one, grab you some red Scotch-Brite scuff pad or some fine grit sandpaper, and that area that you want to glue that plastic back together, scuff it out real good. And I'm not just doing the contact surface, I'm going all the way around the edges. I'm going to put the adhesive on to where it wraps around edges and gets inside the little inside part of it there, and kind of create a mechanical lock. To prep the surface, 3M polyethylene or polyolefin. It's freaking adhesion promoter, man. That's what you want. So I like to start spraying a spot on a clean microfiber rag, rub that area clean, rub the broken off piece clean, best we can, all those little areas inside of it. And this stuff leaves behind a sticky residue, kind of helps that glue to bond to the surface. And then I finish up with just a really light dust coat. So this is awesome. If you can get this gun, I don't know, there's a number that says DMA 50 on the side of it, but it's a 3M small 2-part applicator gun. We're using this product for your tips. Because if you don't use this whole tube, all you got to do next time you're ready to use it, take the old tip off. You still got good fresh stuff in the gun. Take a new tip and you're ready to go again. This stuff really is super fast. You need to make sure you're ready to hold this thing in place. I think the thing to do is just go ahead and tape this thing in place. So I got it taped in there. I'm gonna make sure that when I put this in place, I'm lined up with the hole properly. When you're ready to glue, purge a little bit out. This is a 2-part mixture. Maybe one side of the tube started pumping before the other side, so purge a little bit out. Make sure you got a good proper mix. Right now I just kind of filled the inside right there. I'm gonna let that cure, take the tape off, and then do the whole mechanical lock, wrap it all the way around that piece. All 6 of them that you see inside of the bottom there are gonna have to come out. Let's go ahead and break all those loose. We'll go ahead and get this mirror popped out again. Again, right here you want to be real careful, real gentle. I'm putting a little outward force with my thumb while I just barely work that screwdriver in. I'm really surprised I haven't had more things break. This 30-year-old plastic. There's a little wasp nest. Those larger screws, they're going to have a little resistance to them because there's blue thread lock on there. You might want to put more on when you reassemble. These are the ones that go through that little fold back function that the mirrors have. So if they're not in there nice and tight, when they start backing out, your mirror will become loose. So that thread lock's there for a reason. Be a good idea to put it back on. Seven. There's 7 screws in the bottom. One going in sideways, and he holds that piece to the other larger black piece in there. So I should be able to take this tape off now. He's already holding pretty good, excuse the train. And just because I was handling all around that thing with my dirty fingers, I'm going to do my adhesion promoter process again. So you can see I got it all wrapped around there. And a couple of little tricks. Taking the rubber seal off the back is fairly straightforward. You just got to be really, really careful with it. You're going to be painting your door handles. You'll notice there's also a couple of little rubber plugs inside of here. I try to get those out like I did on the other one. See, they're out of there now. The last time I did this, I used a coat hanger. This is wiggle wire for welding to cars to pull out creases and whatnot. But cut you off a piece of some thick wire like that with the door handle in the open position. You can kind of wedge that piece of wire right up inside of that little hole. Door handle stays open, and you'll be able to paint every single edge. So like I said, I've still got to take the little rubber plugs out of this side. This is just a foaming glass cleaner. Just to kind of lubricate. You don't want to pull them. You want to try to push them from the back side. So there's what it looks like. Just got a little flared, thin little piece coming out the back side of that rubber, and that'll break off if you just try to pull it out. Now if you're too scared, you just want to paint over that rubber, you're free to butch your own car all you want. I don't paint over rubber. Looks like shit. All you guys doing tape off paint jobs. Butchers. I just had the little glow ring pop out of that one. Try to get him out of this one too. So I guess that's something else I'll point out to you. That little light that lights that thing up is in the little black box right here. I'm gonna make sure I get another piece of tape to cover up that light for the glow ring. So at this point, I've been here for about an hour. 1 extra hour to tear down the mirrors properly, tear down the handles properly, so that we can paint every little edge and crevice, not have tape lines. It's worth it. I even had to do a repair on that one little piece of plastic that broke off of this. It only took me an hour. It don't take that much extra time to do something right. I always tell people when they want a quote on a paint job, and the quote ends up being a lot more than they were expecting, and they want to get all crazy about it. The best piece of advice I got for people like that, there ain't nothing worth doing unless you're gonna do it right. Bag it up. So the first thing I like to do when I'm trying to just scuff and shoot stuff is give them a good cleaning. So that's going to be your first step when you get ready to paint anything, is to have it clean. It'll avoid problems with trash getting in the paint later. If I didn't clean the inside of this thing, I might not necessarily be painting all the way to the back of the inside of this cap. I'm going to wrap the edges a little bit, but if you just leave a bunch of dirt in there, more likely something's going to fly out and end up being trash on the outside, start with a clean surface. You're also not going to be grinding dirt and grease and grit and everything into the surface as you're sanding. Just to show you how well we got a match to this original Cayman white pearl, I have not painted this door handle yet. It's the original factory paint on that thing, and after cleaning it up, the fender here that we did already paint, I mean, it's a really close match. It's like the metallic in that pearl might be just slightly coarser than the original. Alright, so it's the next day, ready to assemble the mirrors and handles. As you can see, I've cleaned me off a work area, laid down some microfiber towel so I'm not scratching up my freshly painted parts, keep everything organized. Laid out all my parts here. The first thing I'm going to do is just give everything a good cleaning. You can see we're definitely getting some stuff off of just that one piece. So you may be thinking this little piece that you can't even see because it goes in between the two painted pieces, that I'm just being overkill trying to make it look nice. Well, it's not really about making it look nice. It's more about future proofing, trying to protect this plastic, trying to get the conditioner that's in this VRP in there and make that plastic last longer. So apparently, I feel like this is something that they put on there from the factory because both of these mirrors had never been painted before. It didn't look like anything had been messed with before I took it apart. And so I think this sticky stuff that was on there was something that they did from the factory just to make sure it doesn't unsnap on its own and fall out. So I think I do want to put something back on there. And my first thought is to use some butyl. So that's what it looks like. They sell it in these rolls and it's just a bead of that black sticky stuff. So now we're all laid out. Got to go get my painted pieces. Step one is get this in here, your larger upper assembly. I'm just looking for where those screw holes need to line up while I try to wiggle this thing. because that's the tricky part. You got to get these four lined up here while you get this tab to come to the outside and kind of sit on top. He sits on the outside right there. So at this point, our upper assembly is pretty much done except for popping the glass in, which we'll do last. Now, if I remember correctly, the next thing we got to do is put this piece on with this piece right behind it. I'm going to thread that down the wiring harness. Thread this piece. You got to stick all your wires through that hole. You should have 6 smaller brass screws at this point and 3 larger ones. Now the 3 larger ones are what hold this lower aluminum piece. They're what thread it to the other aluminum piece, the other mechanical part. And it's the hinge for when you're able to fold that mirror back, and they have a little bit of thread lock on them. Because if they back out, or if they're not tight enough, or otherwise become loose in some kind of way, you'll end up with a mirror that kind of rattles around and it'll be loose on that hinge mechanism. So I do highly recommend you get you a little blue thread lock back on those. And I think the thing to do is to go ahead and take the smaller brass ones that thread into the plastic cap piece and get them started. 3 go straight in this way, and you got 1 that comes in sideways. So I'm going to go ahead and get my 3 large machine threaded. See, they're machine threads. I'm going to get them started with a little dab of thread lock on there. I've had that same tube of thread lock for over 10 years. Because you only need it every now and then, and when you need it, you only need a tiny little drop. Tighten these up a little bit at a time. I'm not going to tighten one up all the way until all the others are starting to seat too. So now we should have the functional folding function without any looseness. Just like that. Beautiful. Isn't that pretty? I think it's pretty. At this point, you should have 2 screws left. And they go there and there. All these wires got to go through that little tube in that piece. Looks like I haven't scratched it up anywhere yet. That's good. That's good. So, like I said, I'm gonna put the butyl, just a couple of little dabs of butyl. I think I'm gonna put one right there and right there. Clean the corresponding spot. I'm not trying to use a whole lot. If you think you got the butyl a little dirty when you were mashing it on there, you just, same thing, this adhesion promoter. See it turning black, it's cleaning a layer of butyl off the surface, exposing some fresh butyl. Yeah, nice and tacky. I do have the right side, yeah, okay. Or the left side, whatever. So if you remember, the top of the mirror, hooks on. I'll straighten that out a little bit. Hooks in the top side. Don't forget to plug in the heater. And then if you get everything seated correctly, you should hear it pop into place. You can just kind of look back in there. Make sure our white piece is sitting all the way up against the glass piece. Make sure you popped it in all the way. Give it a little tug, make sure it's not popping out on its own. Make sure you got all your movement without anything weird happening. And we're ready to go. So now we have a mirror that's as close to brand new as we can get it. No tape lines, no overspray on the black part around the glass. No crusty white stuff on the black plastic piece there on the edge. Last thing I gotta do is pin that plug back up, which is super easy as long as we know where to put the wires. So I'm going to repin this plug now. I drew me a little diagram. Snaps right in. The next one was a blue with a red stripe. That's that guy. Again, we make sure the hole is going towards the middle of the plug. He snaps right in. Snap. Try to shove him in there. It's always good when you hear it snap. Snap. I'll lock him in place. And we're done. I'm not going to go as far as to put that loom back on. It's kind of unnecessary, but I am going to put a piece of tape around here. This was kind of folded over like that with a piece of tape around it. Ready to install back to the car now. So next, I'm going to get the driver's side door handle. Do you remember that little piece of wire we cut to hold the handle open? We're going to be real careful not to let that thing fall out. I'm not going to pull back on this handle and release the tension that's on it. Our rubber plugs, because those are stoppers for this thing. And if we let it snap back down, it could scratch our fresh paint right in here. It's looking really nice. Really good restored middle door handle. So just being real careful, I'm going to start taking my tape off. So there's only a few parts to put back on. I'm going to clean them up a little bit. I've got the rubber seal that goes around the back of the door handle. I've got the little rubber stoppers. Those are going to be the first things I want to get in there so that I can let that handle loose again and not worry about it snapping shut on its own. We got to make sure we put this piece back in there. So I'm going to get in here with some polish. I'm going to see if we can get that plastic back to being completely transparent. You heard me call that thing the glow ring. You have a tiny little light bulb inside the handle that illuminates that thing. Get this rubber piece. Just gonna pour out some of my VRP here. I did all my door seals this way, just putting it on a whole bunch of it. So yeah, compared to the old one, I cleaned it up a little bit. It's a little more clear. So I'm going to get these back in here. Trying not to let that handle snap close before I'm ready. I'm going to try to use a pair of pliers and just very gently rock it back and forth in circles. Try to get this back in without it breaking. So I think on this next one, I'm going to make sure it's really lubed up. I'm going to dip it in that VRP. Well, that went a lot smoother. Should have done that the first time. So now I can take our little pin out that's holding our handle up. Another thing I messed up on, I forgot to put me a little tape to hide the light bulb. It's got a little paint on it. So I'm going to clean that off. So you see that little light has that same kind of little rubber flared deal to hold him in there. So I'm going to lube that liberally. Try to get that back in there. There he goes. That shorter but fatter tab will be kind of towards the top of the door handle, just in case you wanted to know. He's maybe a little A little brownish, a little dingy looking, but a lot better than he was. So there's one tricky part to this. You've got a couple of options on how you want to do it. You've got a hole in the top of the rubber piece, and that hole is there for the arm of this spring to go through. So you can sit there and try to pry that spring up so that you can get him on there where he's supposed to be. I'm going to take the easy way. It's kind of a tight spring, and I don't want to be prying and end up scratching the thing. I'm just going to make a little cut. That way you can just get him back on there. Last thing we got to do before we install, like I said, this pin right here, little C-clip, just go ahead and get him lined up, snap him all the way in. We're going to get the door handle bolted into the car. We're going to get our latch assembly bolted into the car. The latch assembly still has all the rods that go to this lever and go to this lever for the lock cylinder. All that's still attached. So once the latch assembly is back in, I'll pop the opener rod in. I'll wiggle this thing onto the lock rod and pop him back in there. It actually ends up this way. So I'm going to demonstrate. I'm going to make sure y'all got a good view here. What I'm talking about. That clip's already fully installed, and when you're ready, that thing snaps right in there. There it is with the door handle in. So when you're ready to go back together, you already have the clip installed. It's being a little difficult, but it just snaps back in the hole and it's locked in. Got to get the opener rod hooked up, and I'll show you a good way to do that. I may have to go through the hole way down on the bottom. The best way I can find to install this thing nice is with a pair of channel locks, and just get that thing to snap in.